going to be solving 1- and 2-step equations. This is really important. It's the basis for algebra, and I want you to take careful notes today. Let's start by setting our goals. What are we trying to do when we're solving equations? Here's our primary goal, goal 1. If possible, we want to try to change big equations into something that looks like the letter equals one number. That's our goal. We want to get down to letter equals number. I have a lot of x's today, so I want to get down to x equals a number. That's my goal. That way I know what x is. Now, in all of our problems, it may not be possible to get that far. If I can't get down to x equals a number, then my second goal would just be to simplify as much as possible. So make it as simple as possible. 2 goals. Okay, here we go. Here's our rules for how we're going to do that. Rule 1. We are going to rewrite the problem with each step we do. That way we don't lose any numbers. We don't forget to do anything. This is important. Rewrite it with each thing you do today. Rule 2. To move numbers around in our equations, we are going to treat the equal sign as the balance point, the midpoint of a balance, like a scale. That means I can do the same thing to each side and keep it in balance. I can add to both sides. I can subtract from both sides. I can multiply from both sides. And as long as I do the same thing on each side, I've kept my equation in balance, and that's okay. In order to solve, we're going to do the inverse of whatever's already going on to both sides. The inverse of adding is subtracting. The inverse of subtracting is adding. The inverse of multiplying is dividing. The inverse of dividing is multiplying. So if I'm adding, I'm going to subtract on both sides. If I'm multiplying, I'm going to divide on both sides. That might sound a bit confusing, but this is what we're doing, and let me show you how it works. We're going to rewrite the problem with each step. Our goal is to get down to x equal a number, and we're going to move the numbers around by doing the inverse to both sides. Let's start with some one-step equations. Some words you're going to hear me use as I talk about these. You might hear me talk about the variable. Variables are the letters. I only have one variable in each of my problems today. Variable, 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 variable. Another word you may hear me use is the constant. The constant is the number that's added or subtracted to the variable. Here I'm adding 3, that's my constant. I don't have a constant here. I'm not adding or subtracting anything. Here I'm adding 5, that's my constant. Here I'm subtracting a half, that's my constant. Constant, constant, constant. Third word you might hear me say is coefficient. Coefficient is the number multiplied by your letter. Here my coefficient is 3. Here I'm multiplying times 2, my coefficient is 2. Here I'm multiplying by -2/3. My coefficient is -2/3. Make sure that you write down those vocabulary words as well as some example definitions. Pause the video if you need to. When you're ready to move on, start it again. Okay, so let's solve some one-step equations. We're going to rewrite the problem, do the inverse to both sides to try to get to the place where we have x equals a number. Here we go. X plus 3 equals 5. How do I solve this? Well, I want to get down to x equals something. And the way to do that is going to be to move the 3 to the other side. So I'm left with x equals numbers. How can I move the 3? To move a number, do the inverse to both sides. The inverse is the opposite. So right now I'm adding 3. The opposite of adding is subtracting. I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides. Do you see I'm subtracting 3 and subtracting 3? X, I'm going to rewrite my equation now. X plus 3 minus 3, those cancel out, huh? If I add 3, then I subtract 3, I don't have any left. Equals, bring down your equal sign, 5 minus 3. 5 minus 3 is 2. My problem solved. is 2. Now you probably knew this just by looking at the problem. What number plus 3 is 5? Well, 2 plus 3 is 5. You know that. This is just the way to move around the numbers. This will help you when we get to larger problems where you may not know it just by looking at it. Let's look at this one. We want to solve again. Our goal is to get down to x equals a number. We want to rewrite the problem with each step. And to move numbers, we're going to do the inverse. So let's see here. I want to get to x equals 5. But x right now is times 3. It has a coefficient. Let's do the inverse of times 3 to both sides. So I'll be left with x equals a number. The inverse of times is division. So I want to divide by 3 to both sides. Times 3 divided by 3 cancels out. Leaves me with x equals 5/3. Now that's what I wanted. I wanted to get down to x equals a number. But this isn't quite its simplest form. Let's simplify this a bit more. 5/3 is an improper fraction. 5 is more than 3. I can rewrite this as x equals 1 2/3. And that would be my best answer. Let's look over here at two-step equations. To solve two-step equations, we want to follow the same process, but we have an extra step. Instead of just adding or subtracting or just multiplying and dividing, we're going to have to do two things. So let's start here. 2x plus 5 equals 35. I want to start by moving the constant. That's the number plus or minus. Right now it's plus 5. To move it to the other side, so I'm starting to get x's equal numbers, I want to do the inverse. The inverse of addition is subtraction. That leaves me with 2x plus 5 minus 5 cancels out, equals 35 minus 5. 35 minus 5 is 30. That was step 1, but remember these are two-step problems. Now, my problem looks a lot like this. I have a coefficient times my variable equals 30. 2 times x is 30. Well, you can probably in your brain think, well, Miss, 2 times 15 would be 30. I already know that. Let me show you how to do it with the numbers, though. We want to do the inverse of what's going on to move the numbers to the other side. The inverse of multiplication is division. So I'm going to divide by 2 to both sides. And x does indeed equal 15, just as you knew in your brain. We've got to our goal of getting the problem all the way down until x equals 1 number. Let's try one more. This looks different because it has fractions. It's not any different. It works the same. We still want to get to x equals a number. We're still going to rewrite the problem with each step like we've been doing. And when we move numbers, we want to do the inverse to both sides. Start by moving your constant, then divide by your coefficient, just like we did. We moved our constant, we divided by our coefficient. We moved our constant, we divided by our coefficient. Here we go. I have a constant right here. It's minus a half. Do the inverse, which is plus a half to both sides. Minus a half plus a half will cancel out. Leaves me with negative 2/3 x equals a third plus a half. I'm going to need to do a little scratch work to figure that out. I know that I can't just add 1/3 plus 1/2 because they don't have common denominators. Let's make them into fractions with common denominators by finding equivalent fractions so that we can solve. I know that 3 and 2 both have multiples that are 6. So instead of 1/3, let's change it into a number of 6. And instead of 1/2, let's change it into a number of 6. 3 times 2 is 6. So 1 times 2. Numerator? 2 times 3 is 6. So 1 times 3 is 3. 5, 6. 5, 6. So negative 2/3 x equals 5, 6. Now I'm going to do the same process I did here. When I've got my coefficient times my variable, divide by the coefficient. Divide by negative 2/3. This looks difficult, but it's just going to cancel out because we're multiplying and dividing. Here, I'm going to write it this way. divide by negative 2/3. These will cancel, leaving me with x equals 5/6 divided by negative 2/3. Now use your rules for fractions. Dividing fractions we don't do. Instead we multiply times the reciprocal. Let's rewrite it for each step. 5/6 divided by negative 2/3 would be the same as 5/6 times negative 3/2. 5 times 3 is 15. 6 times 2 is 12. Negative 15/12. Let's simplify that one more time. 15/12 is an improper fraction. I can subtract out 12/12 to be negative 1 and 3/12. 3/12 I can simplify again. Negative 1 and 1/4. Use these steps as you solve your problems in class.